In the midst of the busy closing days of the Synod on Synodality, Pope Francis released his latest encyclical, Dilexit Nos, meaning He Loved Us, which focuses on the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Presenting the encyclical at a press conference were Sister Antonella Fraccaro, Superior General of the Disciples of the Gospel, and theologian Archbishop Bruno Forte. Archbishop Bruno Forte emphasized the significance of the encyclical, describing it as a key to understanding the entirety of Pope Francis' pontificate.
The central idea of this encyclica is that the love of God revealed in Jesus Christ is not a kind of intimistic experience, but it is the source, the deep source of engage yourself to love the others and change society, to build peace through dialogue and the respect of the other.
Timed to coincide with the conclusion of the Synod on Synodality, Dilexit Nos also challenges church leaders to embody compassion. Archbishop Forte pointed out the Pope's call for a model of church governance rooted in empathy and true synodality.
The encyclical speaks to the synodal fathers because it is an invitation to find in the agape of Christ the foundation of a true synodality and of the mission of the Church. The Pope says very clearly that only if we are in love, we can also announce with joy and with efficacy the love of God.
In her remarks, Sister Antonella Fraccaro highlighted the personal call to action embedded in the encyclical.
As the Pope says, I am my heart. Referring to the heart of Jesus means nourishing our own hearts, bringing quality to our lives through the goodness and love of Jesus.
The encyclical's release also marks the 350th anniversary of the first apparition of the Sacred Heart to St Margaret Mary Alacoque. In the encyclical, Pope Francis draws attention to how this devotion has historically revitalized the Church during times of societal unrest and serves as a spiritual foundation for responding to today's global challenges.
We are in the underground crypt down below one of the churches in the center of Rome, Santa Maria Inviolata. And this underground crypt is thought to be one of the places where Peter first and then Paul and their collaborators, Mark and Luke, stayed when they came to Rome. This church is a little bit further away from the Jewish ghetto. Since Peter had been imprisoned in Jerusalem 3 times, he preached to the Jews, but he would have preferred to live in a little dwelling in the area of the Gentiles. So that's one of the reasonings why this place was considered to be St. Peter's first dwelling in Rome, and then also St. Paul when St. Paul arrived to Rome. And we see here, in fact, this bas relief of the Baroque era with St. Paul, the sword, St. Peter with the keys, St. Luke writing the Acts of the Apostles. This is the place where St. Luke would have written the Acts of the Apostles. It's the place where St. Paul wrote 3 or 4 of his letters. The second letter to Timothy, the letter to the Ephesians, the letter to the Colossians, the letter to Philemon. They were welcomed here by St. Martial, who we can barely see in the background there. Martial welcomed them into his home here, and then he was converted by St. Peter and baptized by St. Peter and wound up becoming one of the first bishops. He was sent to Limoges in France. So it's a pretty special place when you think about the presence of the apostles and all of the magisterial teachings that they handed down to us through the letters that were written here. Here we have a pillar, a Roman pillar, which was then reused for the memories of St. Paul being kept here under house arrest. When St. Paul arrived in Rome, he was kept under house arrest for 2 years. This pillar has an inscription reminding us of one of the letters that St. Paul wrote from here to Timothy, the second letter to Timothy. We read over here, "Remember Jesus Christ raised from the dead, a descendant of David. Such is my gospel, for which I am suffering, even to the point of chains like a criminal. But the word of God is not chained." And we see that writing on this pillar, the word of God is not chained, and we can see the markings of the chain that was wrapped around this pillar, the chain that we see over here in this casing, reminding us of St. Paul's being under house arrest while he was here in Rome. There's also an ancient well here, fairly deep well. This is where the chain was found, and this shows us this was an old dwelling place originally, a Roman domus, so very well a place where Peter and Paul and Mark and Luke could have lived. And at the same time, it was then used by Peter and Paul to baptize the first Christians in Rome. We are now in the upper church. This is a Baroque church that was built in place of the medieval church, so around the 17th century. At the very center of the church, we find this icon of Mary, 12th century icon, which, however, goes back to the tradition of St. Luke, who painted the first icons here in Rome, perhaps in this very dwelling. The title of this icon is Mary Advocata, she who intercedes for us. She has one of her hands raised in prayer. She is interceding for us at the throne of Jesus. We have among the paintings St. Paul, who is baptizing one of the first Christians in Rome, Santa Sabina. She lived over on the Aventine Hill, one of the first women of Rome who was converted by the apostles and baptized by them. Seeing this painting helps remind us that even though this church doesn't have a title of St. Peter or St. Paul, it's entitled to Mary because of the icon that Luke painted. At the same time, the painting reminds us of the presence of the apostles here, of their preaching in Rome, of the impact that they left on the Roman people through their teaching and through their example.